Let me introduce myself to you. My name is Jaime Bennington. I'm 27 years old. I am the firstborn son of Chester Bennington, and over the last 6 years, I've gone from a firm supporter of his suicide to someone who's absolutely convinced that he did not take his own life, and that instead he was killed by something or someone for some purpose. And I will be investigating that.
Welcome to the 2400 Block Podcast with your hosts, Jonnyroobs and Ken.
Podcast spin, intelligence binge watch. Jonnyroobs with the wisdom, never botch. Dark thoughts ventilate, any crave knowledge. 2400 crew, like grip in college. Clever minds unite, discussions land tight. Sync up thoughts, intertwine, never bark trite. Mics up, lights down, we the crew profound. Jonnyroobs know the truth, bomb is going round. Catchy beats, the block that never sleeps. 2400 sound in your brain it creeps. Catchy sound, the block that never bounds. 2400 tossing substance that astounds. Catchy beats, the block that never sleeps. 2400 sound in your brain it creeps. Catchy sound, the block that never bounds. Tumitiras aking tablado para akong hand grenade. Pagsabog ng salita.
Hi everyone, I'm Jonnyroobs and welcome to episode number 05-06, and I have Jaime Bennington, son of Linkin Park legendary frontman Chester Bennington. He is a filmmaker and a live streamer on the socials. He also watches anime, plays video games, sings some songs, and creates art content. Now, Jaime is our guest for tonight, and we are delighted to have him here on the 2400 Block Podcast. Firstly, I'll be doing a Q&A interview, and afterwards, Ken will take things to the next level. Now, thanks, Jaime, for taking the time to join us. Welcome to the block.
Hi, thank you for having me. That was an awesome introduction.
Dude, having you here is awesome, and I hope I don't call you Chester at some point in the conversation, because the resemblance between you two is indeed uncanny. Now, there was one occasion I called a guy Vince Vaughn because he looked like him. So, anyways, Jaime, let's cut to the chase. Are you ready for this?
I am, and just so you know, it's okay if you accidentally slip. I'm not going to.
Okay.
Okay. I understand.
Thanks so much for understanding.
Yeah.
All right. First question. What was it like growing up with a rock star dad? It must have been awesome.
It can be. It can be awesome. I think the thing I'm coming to terms with as an adult is just how little of my dad I actually had, because he was a rock star. You know, I always try to put things into perspective for people in a simple way. So I'll just explain that each album has a production period and then has the touring period.
Oh.
Right? So it's a coin. You have an album, and on one side you had making the album, and the other side you have playing that album. And, you know, Linkin Park had an album in 2000. That was Hybrid Theory. 2003, Meteora. In 2006, Chester recorded Dead by Sunrise, had to re-record it, couldn't release it because of Minutes to Midnight. Then there was, in 2007, Minutes to Midnight. 2009 was Dead by Sunrise, for real. And then 2010 was 1,000 Suns. 2012 was Living Things. 2014 was Hunting Party. And in 2013, there was that tiny Stone Temple Pilots EP. And then in 2017, there was One More Light. And he was already practicing for shows for Grey Days, also repurposing that music, which Sean Dowdell has done over the years. And he was also about to play new Dead by Sunrise shows with Frank Zumo as the drummer. So it was like, in reality, there's only maybe 2 to 3 real years in between each album cycle. And that half of that cycle is him out of the house or away doing, you know, the actual performing. And the other half of it is him spending countless hours in the studio. And then he has to come home and do everything. And then, as an adult, I'm sitting here thinking, damn, was he okay? You know what I mean? That's so much. And then, you know, he was a part of Kings of Chaos and Bucket of Weenies. And so he had all these things going on. And so in my reality, it's become very clear to me, you know, I didn't really get to have a dad. I got what I was allowed to get of him. And then on top of that, there were all these internal dynamics that prevented me from knowing the truth of my father, with like where he came from. I went to high school at the Electric Ballroom in Tempe, which is was a famous venue that Grey Days used to sell out before Linkin Park. That's where they cut their teeth. And that was repurposed after being shut down into a charter high school, which became the New School for the Arts and Academics, which was my high school.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't even know about Grey Days or anything. Nobody told me. They kept it from me. That I was going to school where my father cut his teeth when he wasn't in my life for whatever reason. Because I met my dad when I was, I want to say about 7.5, 8 years old. I didn't know him from the top. So my mom was a single mom for a long time. When I ask her about it, she gives me a lot of different answers as to what the relationship was or what the situation was. But usually it's a different answer every time. And that's kind of, it's unreliable. So, I take everything with just as a grain of salt. It's like, look, I understand there's a lot more going on here that I'm not going to get answers on. But what's really interesting is that as a rock star son, a lot of my life was controlled by people for one reason or another, even as a child out of the industry. So when I started researching myself, which is how my Picture Pieces archive came to be, I found that, for example, I found out many things, but one of them was that I was thoroughly brainwashed 3 or 4 times. By the time that my dad died, I was telling stories about my life that weren't true at all. And my parents and friends and family were just letting me do it. Those that knew. Those who didn't. They kind of used me as a way to smooth over some of the canonical inconsistencies in Chester's career and personal life. And so that was really interesting. I think it's just been a journey of mine to realize what it's like to have a celebrity parent. Because, I was telling people that I never knew about Chester, that one day he just found out about me and popped up in my life. But at 5.5, 6.5 years old, I showed up to my mom and was like, hey, do I have a dad? That's how that happened. He didn't just magically remember me. And it's not that he forgot about me the whole time either. It's a very complex thing. He has 2 wives in the mix. Or I guess not 2 wives, because my mom wasn't his wife. But he has my mother, who's incredibly difficult. And then he has his first wife, Samantha, who's also incredibly difficult, as like buffers between him and me. So there's stories saying that he knew about me back when my mom was pregnant. There's stories saying that my mom never told him. There's stories saying that they had 3 DNA tests taken after I was born. There are people saying that there were no DNA tests ever taken. It's like, there's like literally a million possibilities and nobody can ever agree on anything. So,
oh my God.
It's been a very confusing, wild ride. And some of it's fun, dude. Like going on tour with the band was amazing. Like being a kid and seeing 100,000 people packed into a stadium from side stage, all with their hands up, going, in the end. That's insane. Like, there's nothing that compares to it beyond like religious worship. That's like being in church. That's like being in the biggest mega church and everybody just being aligned to one wavelength. It's like what I imagine some mega preachers might feel. But yeah, there are wonderful times I've had with the band, and then there are equally as like desolate times, for sure, as a child, especially in the situation. Because also, like, a lot of the band dynamic is shrouded in mystery and secrecy. It's very much so little kids over here, and then big kids over here. And big kids, they don't interact with little kids because they're just little kids, and they're doing big kid stuff. And it's always been that way. So, where I thought I knew the band really well, I really didn't. Where I was calling people family, I shouldn't have. Where I was putting a lot of trust into people I didn't know. I should have been more careful with that, to be honest. And that's kind of where I'm at. So it's like a 50-50 situation.
Wow, it's so hard to like find the truth, especially when you're that young.
When you're that young, when everybody in your life is supposed to be the narrator, but they're unreliable. But also, when I was just doing research on myself and I found that brainwashing, and then I did my research on Chester and I saw the same shiz going on, I was like, interesting. How did those 2 things end up being the same thing? Why did that happen? It's almost like I got Chester.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting to think about the implications of such a specific kind of bamboozlement.
Yeah. You know, despite that, were you still able to play with your toys and, you know, have your own peace of mind, you know, having the TV to yourself?
Kind of. There were like, in my family, there were kind of like, I say kind of a lot for this right now because it's not really hard and set, you know? It's kind of dependent on how the parents are feeling when, but, you know, I spent a lot of time dissociating with like video games.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up on PS2, you know? I was playing like The Cat in the Hat and like Monsters Incorporated and like things like that. But then I was also like exposed to like Max Payne and other things. Where it's just like you go from this like really weird kind of campy, cartoony nonsense to like this super meta kind of like Max wakes up in the middle of the game realizing he's a video game character, kind of blowing your mind at like 5 years old kind of stuff. It's like I grew up with all the toys, you know. I grew up with my cat is literally trying to claw through the door right now. They've never done that. Never doing that. Firefly, not right now. You're gonna rip. She's gonna make me let her in. Hold on.
No problem.
Go. Yeah, no. You're getting out of here. No, you did this to me 3 times today. No.
This is the cool part about being on a podcast, guys. You don't know what to expect.
Here's the demon that's trying to destroy the carpet. She's gonna be released now.
It's nice to see her there for a second.
That's crazy. She's gonna come do it again. She's like hell bent. She doesn't really like the kitten right now. She's like, you want to hang out with him too long. Now I'm fermenting. Okay. But no, I had toys. You know, I was very interested in things like that. I was a big reader as a kid. I loved reading. So I just like spending time with things. But I also realized that a lot of that zest for being in prolonged interactions with things that I enjoyed was actually a result of me either being like shut in my room on discipline or like just being lonely. And I'm like, it's not that the things I was doing I didn't like. I love reading. You know, I've read, I think like 30 something Stephen King books. Like I'm a big, I just, anything that I really enjoy, I love to look into it. I don't just like consuming media. I like knowing how it's made. I like trying to do it myself. I like looking at all sorts of stuff around it. And I'm very brainiac that kind of way. And which is kind of the reason that I'm such a troubling person at this point. You know, it's like I feel like the ops are like, fuck this guy. He is literally nonstop. He always is talking. He's always coherent. If he's not coherent, he just is likable. I just feel like there's a lot of like, you know, I watch all my stuff back. So like I can say that about myself. It's like I see what I was doing there and I'm like, I appreciate that. But like I just spend so much time alone and talking to myself that at this point I've turned it into a tool. I'm like, hey, you guys want to hear me talk to myself? I'll write a song. Hey, you want to hear me talk to myself? I'm doing a live stream. It's going to be 6 hours, you know. And
at least it's helping you out. At least it is helping you out.
It's experimental therapy. I created my own therapy for my own needs. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I understand myself. And being public is part of the process. And I think that, you know, one of the things that made me even close to like able to be this way is that I love art the way I love it. You know, I love my toys the way I love my toys. I've seen Twin Peaks season 3 like 20 times all the way through. As a full movie, I'll just watch it like 13 hours at a time. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm so enamored with things that draw my attention. And, you know, I had like a Flint from the Bugs Life movie. There's an old like toy. It's like a stuffed animal with the segmented body and the big old head. And he's got these antlers that have like wire in them so you can bend them in shapes and stuff. I had that as like a little blankie for a while, like a little safety net. I just like chew on the antennas all the time. Like I loved Spy Kids. Like all those movies are my childhood. Like Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Like I just kind of grew up in this like postmodern, this landscape of postmodern cannon fodder almost. It's like so many things happen. You know, I grew up watching Prison Break. I'm watching like major TV shows. Like I've always been attracted to movies, books, I used to have toys. Like I used to love Star Wars toys for some reason. Before I was even reading the old fiction and getting into their universe, right around the time that Disney bought it. So I know what the old one was like and I know what the new one was like. I was doing both at the same time. And I was like, oh my God, what did you do? And this one, like, oh my God, I can't believe they did this to you. And, you know, I was really nerdy with it. And I think I learned how to think big by becoming a creator in harmony with my resonant love for the things I was experiencing. Cause like all of all of Stephen King's work is like connected. All of the Star Wars stuff is connected. You know, it's like, oh, look at the Sith Lord from 2,000 years ago, and then go look at the Jedi Republic falling under its own hubris. It's like, oh my God, that's crazy. And, you know, it's like to even consider that like the Sith were actually a full-fledged army, or like a full-fledged like school of mysteries with like thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers, and then they became like the rule of two is like so interesting. I see a lot of it in like our political landscape right now. But you know, I think I kind of became disheartened as someone who did love their art so much, because where I was an artist and I was making all of these interconnected pieces of art, you know, making movies, making literature, you're writing literature, making music. I was putting my pieces into all these other places and connecting them for myself. So everything that I have is like one continuous mass. I've always planned it that way. But like for other people, it's not like that. It's so meta. Sometimes it's not even a reference, you know? Sometimes it's like, no, that's just a square of cheese, you know? But for me, I'm like, no, you don't understand where the cheese came from. And it's got like 5 videos and 2 short stories behind it that are all seemingly non-connected. And I think that when I realized, like, I think honestly, being someone who grew up in Star Wars, you know, the Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace, things like that, they came out when I was a kid. That stuff I saw in the theater. And then to see like my uncle grow up in, someone I called my uncle for a long time. His name is Jay. He had a whole library. He basically had every single book, every comic, all the action figures. He's like a 30-year-old man. I'm like, now at the time I started reading the books, you know, he was a lot older than that because they had already sold to Disney. And I remember reading them side by side and reading about like Darth Bane, which is one of my favorite Star Wars trilogies, is that Darth Bane series. And then I'm like reading like the super bland, like I think the best thing about the reboot was the Darth Vader comic. Like that was amazing. That run, like I probably went through like I think I went through most of it, but I went through like 2/3 of it in real time. And I was just like, oh my God, this is stellar writing. And then it was like, wait a second, I'm watching the movies and they're terrible. And I'm watching the shows and they're all right, but I don't understand. And I'm following the Clone Wars. I've seen all of that, you know, and I'm like, you know what? It kind of feels like they bought this and ruined it. It kind of feels like they're trying to gaslight me right now. And, you know, I kind of feel like really bad about it. Like I feel so bad for all of the people who will never know what it felt like to be in the mines with Bane before he even became Bane, like his rise to the dark side. Like that's so philosophical. He's not even a bad guy at that point. You know, it's like I'm watching like Legend of Korra, which is a one variant of the Avatar: The Last Airbender series, and I'm turning to Huron, and I'm like, yeah, kill them all. You know what I mean? And I'm like, damn, it's because of Star Wars. It's because of them that I was able to comprehend that not all bad things are bad people. You know what I mean? Like sometimes peace is a boundary that needs to be reinforced all the time through resistant action, and that's what it is. Like, I can't tell you how happy it made me to see that mofo fly. Like truly,
man, through all that you were facing, you know, like what you just, you know, said about trying to find the truth. It's good that you at least found something, you know, found some sort of escape, you know, just by reading books. The battle between good versus evil.
That's actually what I told my family in 2016 when Chester went to rehab. I had made it clear to pretty much everybody in my life. Like, they were like, you know, some people were like, you've been through a lot. You might want to like go to therapy. Like really take it seriously. And I was like, well, I've seen the way therapy plays out in my family. I've seen the way antidepressants play out in my family and in my friends, both things in my friends. And it doesn't work. Like you can't go to therapy just to pay someone to listen to you and never change. Like the reason you go to therapy is to change, right? You go to heal, you go to understand so you could do better. But if you're going in just to throw that all away when you walk out and just be the same shitty person you were when you went in, that's crazy. That's so expensive.
Yep.
That's so lame. Of like, what a weird allocation of your energy. And then on top of that, it's like, I'm not going to be drugged in that environment. Like, no way. I'm not taking antidepressants with people like that around me. No way. And I told, I said it from the heart. I was just like, I won't do it because I'm developing therapy for myself through my art. I write about what I need to talk about. I embody my emotions as best as I can. I'm writing full-length feature films about it and disguising it as small towns being invaded by alien body snatchers, extraterrestrial body snatchers. Like, okay, that's literally my life. But would you know unless you understand the metaphor? Probably not, there were so many scenes looking back. I've been going over my work on and off throughout the years. I always like to do that. I've always been that way. Just like eating what I make again and again and again to see, like, as I grow, like, oh, is that a foreshadowing? Or, oh, what was that thought? I didn't know I knew that at that time, And then it's like, but it's so close, so you don't even see it. And then, sometimes I'm like, whoa, like that was crazy. I have a whole scene where we're talking about antidepressants and trauma. And it's in 2016 I'm writing this, This is at the time Chester's getting off his antidepressants after going to rehab in Utah, like getting back into the Linkin Park machine, doing One More Light, getting that record re-recorded and put out on the market, like doing the tour. And I have a whole ass scene where they're talking about how, and I wasn't even around people talking like this at the time. This was my creative mind. This is what needed to be said. You don't get to decide when you're sick and when you're not, especially when you're someone who doesn't know you're sick. Like, you have to believe in the consistency in order for it to work. And you're hurting people by ignoring the consistency that's very real, which is that you're losing your fucking mind still. And it's getting more and more bad. And you need to be careful of how that can actually break what you're trying to build. And then everything happens the way it happens. And I didn't even notice that for years. And then I went back and I was like, whoa, I didn't even talk to my dad like this at the time. I'm seeing Chester in this. I'm seeing other people in this. I'm seeing patterns in my life congealed into one metaphor. And that's when I started going, I kind of want to write songs now. I was never really a songwriter before that. But then I realized, wait, I can say a lot of really cool stuff in little words because I focus so often on how I speak and why I speak. I'm like, okay, well, it took me 120 pages to say this. Now I'm going to try to say it in 5 lines. And I think that's kind of the gift and the curse of coping with media, in my opinion, for me, because my father, he didn't speak his truth unless it was in music. That's primarily where he inscribed his wisdom, was in his career. He spent 90% of his time doing it.
I have a question here from a podcaster. His name is Dustin, and he has a question for you.
Sure.
What's up, Jamie? My name is Dustin. I'm out of Florida with Hurts So Good Music, and I've known Johnny for a couple years now. So I'm super stoked that you're on his podcast. He's a good dude. I would love to know, if it's not too personal, what your most just vibrant memory with your father is. Linkin Park aside, unless that's part of it, but Linkin Park aside, what is your most vibrant, most amazing memory with your father? I would love to hear about that.
Thank you for asking. You kind of sound like him. Just a little bit over the phone. Wow, I had a couple that flashed in my memory real quick. But I would say the most innocent version of it, like the most, like, all context removed.
Mm-hmm.
Chester brought me to Palo Verde, where he was living with Samantha, his first wife, my brother's mother. And we were in the convenience store, like at a gas station. And, or maybe it was a grocery store. Maybe we were grocery shopping. I don't have many memories of grocery shopping with Chester, though. That's not something we do like that. I wish, but that's not something that happened too often. Let's see. We were checking out. Whatever it was, we were checking out. And so I'm like 8.5, 9 years old. I'm really little. Meteor is just about to hit. Hybrid theory just happened. Draven's in the picture. He's a little tiny baby. And I'm back at his house, and he's trying to be my dad. He's trying to bring me into the house. And we're at this gas station, the store, whatever we're doing, and we're checking out. And I grab. He's like, "What, do you want anything?" And I'm like, "Eh." And then he's like, "No, for real. Like, what do you want? Like, I'll get it for you." And I was like, I came from an incredibly impoverished situation. Like, we couldn't even afford electricity. Okay, so candy or anything is like a big deal. And so I was like, I grabbed some Skittles and I put them down. And he's like, "Okay." And I was like, "I don't know how much it is though." And he like snatched them out of my hand and he's like, "You'll never have to worry about that again." He's like, "It's fine." And he put them down and then he's like, "That's what you're getting then." I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, I can't believe he said that. Like, my mom wouldn't say that to me. You know, she might say something else, but like, to look me in the eyes and say, "You don't have to worry about this ever again." But he acknowledged that I had that. You could see it on his face. Like, I'm like, "I don't know how much it is." And he's looking around like, damn, he's really been in it, huh? You know what? I'm happy I'm here. Give me those Skittles. And it was just such a genuine, like, I think just a realizing for him, like, I've heard many stories, either he knew or he didn't, but in the stories that he did, like that he did know about me, it's always that he was heartbroken about it. Like, he just was not physically allowed to be in my life.
Wow.
Another genuine memory I have is I think he was actually sending me gifts before I even met him, or around the time that I asked about him. It's hard to tell. But he sent me a fire truck, of all things. Sent me like a 2-scale model fire truck with like the ladder and everything. It's like remote controls. Like, it was crap. I don't know why he sent that to me, but it was a gift he gave me, and it was around the same time ish. So like within 2 or 3 years of like being in PB with him for that Skittles incident. And what's really sad is I think that he would actually be quite frustrated with the way that this world has turned out for me, because he definitely didn't get to follow through on that promise. He definitely did not get to do that, and in his passing, I certainly didn't make anything out of that. Like, there was no, you never have to worry about money again. I only have money now because I flipped my house in May. My little brother was like, "Wasn't that enough for you? You got to sell the house." And I was like, I got to sell the house after gatekeeping it for 7 years for people like you who don't understand or care to be here in an honest way. So no, I'm selling it. And since I don't get anything, this is my inheritance. My inheritance is I made out of my life what I made out of it, because none of you would just give it to me. I had to bite and scratch for it. So here it is. Now I'm going to dedicate myself to being the most annoying, consistent person on the internet, in search of self-truth, and also what the frick happened to my dad.
Yeah. All right. This next question might be sensitive. I know you're listening, but let me know. Let me know if you want me to skip it at any time. Okay, take us through that day, July 20th, 2017. What was going through your mind after you heard the news of your father's passing?
I had been asked a similar question on the last interview, and now I'm just feeling even more of what I said then, which is that I'm trying so hard not to be fucking annoying about this. There's so many. I want to be such an antagonist right now. I want to be like a fire starter, but I know that right now that is not the best option at all for anybody. So it's something I'm going to take a moment to breathe on, because if not, I might accidentally be a punk. I want to be genuine. That day, on that day, I was going through a lot of stuff, like mentally, emotionally, that I wouldn't even be able to process or unpack for years, because I couldn't see it. I've been so blinded by the sun that I was staring into, thinking that it would change somehow over time, but really it just became worse. It's like, no, stop staring at the sun. You're supposed to look at it. The light is indirect. Okay? You burn your retinas out. It's like, yeah, well, I didn't know that. That's not how I was raised. And learning from that's been a big thing. So looking back, and, of course, hindsight's always 20/20. And I can see that I was dealing with a lot of things that I didn't even have words for at the time. At the time, I was suicidal. At the time, I was accepting of Chester's reality, but resistant to the way he conducted himself before he passed. I felt on one side I was a total supporter of him, as the video said. You know, I still am. I support him. I think the only thing you can really do in life is take back your energy and claim it for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and if that was what he did, that's what he did, and that's okay. No matter what caused it. In my mind, I'm okay with it. I've always been okay with it. I mean, he did say that he related to what I was telling him in February of the same year, and I said I was suicidal, so if he knew how I was feeling, I can only imagine that I can't imagine how he felt. And so, you know, I'm pretty, you know, if I see myself in someone, I can definitely resonate, and therefore I am in support of it to a certain level, you know, like, again, okay, you took back your energy, good for you. I watched how hard our lives were, all right? I'm not going to tell you that it wasn't that hard. But also, like, you didn't have to ghost me for 6 months, you know, like, after I told you I was suicidal just to die by suicide. Like, I understand that's allegedly, of course. My investigation says that something maybe greater happened, but, you know, in that moment, I'm just like, yeah, my dad died. And I always tell people this, you know, when I got the call, it was so strange because when they told me, I already knew something was coming. I had received a high volume of calls that I ignored because I wanted my summer. It was junior year summer for me in college. I was like, I'm dodging everybody. I don't want to be in there. I don't want to be here. I don't like these people. I don't like doing things with them. I don't like talking to them. I don't like, you know, and I was dodging everybody. And I just wanted to sit by the pool, play some video games, read a book, watch a movie, maybe 10 times, you know, work on my art, just keep it to myself. And then I got the call and I was like, oh, okay. And the craziest thing happened, all of this heaviness that I didn't realize I was holding on to or attached to in some way, I guess, is a better way of saying it, just lifted. They were like, he's gone. And I was like, who? And they're like, your dad's dead. And I was like, okay. Oh, all right. Oh, damn. Oh, wow. That might be the deepest breath I've ever taken. And it sounds kind of bizarre because it's like, well, he's your dad. He can't have been that bad to you. It's not about him being bad to me. It's about life being life. It's about reality being real. It's about being interacted with, you know? It's like, that's as real as life gets, you know? Your dad was a rock star and then he died by suicide in the middle of a tour on one of his best friend's birthdays under suspicious circumstances. And all you can think is of your last conversation you had in February, which was, I think I might want to die, you know? And so it just, and then in hindsight, of course, there was so much more going on than that. Economically, politically, socially, in terms of the industry. I mean, just go listen to Damn by Kendrick Lamar, okay? Go listen to Sire by Jaden. Go listen to any number of albums that came out that year. We were going through shit. We were going through it. Everybody. And, you know, presidential election had just happened. FBI was investigating the DNC, the John Podesta Gmail leak, which is Pizzagate, the Frazzle Drip secret server issue with head of state Hillary Clinton running for president, Donald Trump being saying, like, it was like, bro, what's going on? This party is wild. Can it please quiet down? And so that's kind of where, you know, to answer your question, you know, it's just, there's so many things to say about it in retrospect, but at the moment I was behind this wall of like, okay, this is what my experience is. And I don't know anything beyond this because at that point in my life, I had specialized so hard out of survival that I only had what I needed. I became like a master of fasting. And so that included my mind. And then as I got out of college, I went and just knocked all those doors down like that. And then I was like, nope, this is who I want to be. And then I was like, damn, by 2019, I was kicked out of the family and everything. You know, like, it was wild.
Wow. So, all right, I have another question here from the same guy.
Okay, cool.
In your eyes, in your family's eyes, what is the best way to keep that legacy alive without slamming the door on it? Or do you slam the door on it? Is it just over? Is it something that you just let go and be done? I would love to know, in your eyes, how you keep that legacy alive, how you keep the music alive, if you continue with somebody else, or you just say, hey, you know what? It's over. It's done.
That's a good question too.
Yeah.
Those are genuine questions. I think an important thing to state for me at this moment is that I'm not against Linkin Park. I've said it just like as many times as I can possibly say it out loud. They are extremely talented, intelligent people. That's why everything they're doing right now to me is just mind-boggling. It's like it's got to be some bigger joke. The last 7 years have to be some big prank they're pulling on everybody for some special reason. Hopefully we get an answer soon. They have yet to offer one. Or at least to me, a reasonable one. And I think that when legacy is in question, it's important to acknowledge where that legacy came from first. Because who made that legacy? What legacy are you talking about? Because there are a couple of legacies that Chester left behind, some of which were commandeered by colleagues and industry professionals and political parties, converted from music into movement. You know, when Chester died, there was a huge mental health movement that kind of came out of the wake of that, and Me Too and all these other things going on. And so it's like, which part are you talking about? Because there's a legacy that Chester gave for himself. Throughout the years, it changed. And then there's a legacy that was determined for Chester in his passing by the people closest to him, who, frankly, have a lot to gain by controlling a narrative like that. I've noticed that very little of the conversation around Chester's legacy involves his death. Very little of it involves the movement that came from his death, as well as, you know, its correlation to a number of socioeconomic and political happenings. And I think that that fundamentally means that you have to make a choice about how you're interpreting legacy. Because if you're taking someone at their own word, it then becomes something else to take someone at their word about what he could have felt or thought or done. And so there are a lot of people saying things for him. And there are a lot of people not saying things for him who could and actually could contribute quite a bit to the situation. There are a lot of people not being held accountable for their interactions with what's going on, like Anna Shinoda, for example, who was a big part of that I Am the Change movement. Linkin Park, who helped fund Give an Hour, which is a big part of that movement. They used the funds from the Hollywood Bowl Memorial Show to do that. So it's like you literally raised money to do what you're doing right now in 7 years' time. You gave it to a nonprofit. You were a part of the movement industry-wide. And none of those people have to say anything, and the band has no obligation to acknowledge any of that. I mean, Mike literally had a career off of that. He had Post-Traumatic and the tour. He had, you know, now he has Scream. He has all of his creative endeavors, his community, his professional industry contacts, but also like everyday people. And I think that, you know, at the end of the day, you know, Mike could be someone who's holding the door open. Maybe there's one more thing left to say, but it takes time. And maybe he's got to be the guy that does that. That's why I was like, maybe he just kicked down the door. I was like, here we go. You know, we're just going to confuse everybody because there's no point confusing anybody by being honest. So let's be dishonest and play a game. And then at the end of it, he'll go, surprise. And like, who fucking knows? Maybe Chester will walk out on stage and be like, I got the deets on Hillary, and I got the deets on Chris, and I got the deets on Puff. You know, you get a citation, you get a citation, you get a citation. Y'all going to jail? Give me back my money. Here's another Linkin Park album. Fuck you. You know, it could be possible. And the thing is like witness protection is very real. And I think that maybe it's important to acknowledge that in the industry, witness protection is often a problem. And also that, because these cartels that call themselves musical agency do what they do in the way that they do it, you can't just say anything. You can't just decide one day, oh, I'm going to flip out, What if there are hidden things all over the place that tell us that some things aren't what they seem, even though we're acting like maybe again, all of this is a big troll. And so in that way, it's like, wait, so when you talk about legacy, you're talking about Chester speaking for himself versus people speaking for him after his death. One may be witness protection, while the other is a more honest understanding of what he wanted for himself. And so there are many, many layers that can be brought in through deductive reasoning, just looking at the symbols in the music, the interactions between the world and the people in the band and colleagues and all that. And so, to say what, I said a couple of times now about what would have been appropriate in the real, I guess like long trend scheme of the world, it kind of would have probably been better if they were doing what they say if they were actually doing what they say they're doing, which they're not actually doing and they're trolling us, they would have done a Paper Cuts tour first. They would have done a Greatest Hits tour, a reunion with the band. They could have even used holograms. They could have done, maybe they could have rotoscoped out entire performances of those songs from other tours, performed with the hologram, said goodbye, acknowledged the mental health movement, acknowledged the closing of the chapter, acknowledged Chester, maybe did a little featurette documentary. Maybe they could have scored it as a band, as they like to do. They tried to do that with the Mall, paid tribute to their roots. That'd be amazing. Johan could have directed it. The band could have scored it. Could have been fucking beautiful. One More Light. You could even call it, you could even call it I Do. Whatever, who gives a shit? You could do whatever you want. And then you could then be like, okay, so now that we are done with Linkin Park as the band Zero, we have this album that we want to give you called From Zero. It's our goodbye letter. It's our acknowledgement of everything that came before this moment and our stepping into that new chapter. And we have people featuring on the album like Emily Armstrong and Colin Brittain. And we have, Brad doesn't want to go tour anymore because he's an old man. So, he's got someone standing in for him, but we like being on stage. We love this. This is part of our DNA, and we want to be able to bring this to the people. But
by the way, what did you thought about their concert since you went there to the Kia Forum?
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
No problem.
I'll go into a briefer version of it because I did do a 4-hour live stream on it called The End of Linkin.
Oh, wow.
Where I explained everything leading up to it, and then, from the announcement to actually going to the show, and then how I felt afterwards and processing all of that. So there's a much longer explanation of this, but in case you don't know, what I just described didn't happen.
Yeah.
That's not what happened. They blitz rushed the gate. They jumped in, and in like 3 days, within 24 hours, they had not only confirmed the rumors that had been intentionally given to the industry throughout the years, but they also just dropped a new album, single, tour, merch line. It was crazy. And it was like, what the hell is going on? They raffled off tickets after 6 days to a LPU showcase where they performed the greatest hits and then performed the new single, which I had predicted was going to happen. And it was just like so wild. And then Emily broke on stage and she said some crazy shit like, Mike taught me how to sing all of this in 8 months. It's like, what? So in January? You mean while you guys were throwing Kyle Christner out of court? You mean while you guys were like ignoring me and not acknowledging what I had been put through in the recent months when there were so many other things overlapping with that? Like, it's kind of wild to think that the greatest hits record came right after that. Like, that was right around Friendly Fire when it came out. And it was like, what is going on right now? And then I think the interesting thing about all of that is that, this is my last kind of thought on it didn't happen, is that Mike has made it very clear that everything on the album was written before Emily came in. That she did have that initial 2019 interaction, but she was called back in once they had completed everything. He said whether she wrote the lines or not, she sang them. And then, so in my mind, it's like, okay, so is Emily and Colin the same thing as Alex? And in that case, if Alex is a paid player, a character, he's a session musician standing in for someone else, and Colin is the same thing, then he's a paid actor standing in for Rob, who hasn't said anything yet and is very mysterious and concerning. And then you have Emily standing in for Chester, but then you have Mike having the audience stand in as Chester. And he's singing, "This is what you wanted, heavy is the crown. I just wanted to be part of something, falling for the lies of the emptiness machine." And it's like, are we all being pranked right now? Like, for real. This is crazy. Why would you name your world tour From Zero when you haven't dropped the album yet? Like, you have a From Zero tour you're on 2 months before the actual album. That's kind of crazy. To say that you showed up and you had no idea you were going to do any of this, and then your second single be directly tied to an animated video and brand sponsorship for League of Legends. It's like, you're lying to me. You're lying right now. Why are you lying? But with that being said, the show was pretty intense because, Mike actually did respond to me in some form or another 3 or 4 times on stage, knowing that I was there. After refusing to take my safety seriously when I was threatened by the Church of Scientology for saying I was going, and that I did not support or consent to the new Linkin Park. It was pretty wild, and I was pretty annoyed. I gotta say, like, I kind of laughed really hard when Mike hit that mic stand. Yeah. He turned around and Emily's mic stand almost bopped him in the face. I got it from such an angle from the opposite side that it looked like he hit his face. And I was like laughing, and I was like, "Oh shit, this is bad. I shouldn't be laughing. Like, what if he really hurt himself?" And then he, a couple days later, I saw like a video of him, and he walks around and he twists it like that, and like you see it spin away from his face, and I was like, "Damn, his spidey senses were on point right there. Holy shit!" Like, he almost took himself out on stage, and he blindly just, he was using the force right there. And then they brought it up on Jimmy Fallon, and I thought that was a very interesting interaction. I think the show was extremely cathartic because for 7 years I've been kind of like wondering just how right I am about my own interactions, my own analysis of the situation, my own research. And then I was like, "Oh, I'm fucking right. I'm right." And then so that was validating, but also I didn't get to see any of those shows from like One More Light era. I don't think I got to see many from the Hunting Party era. Like, it's been over 7 years for me. So like seeing them live was like closing a door because I didn't see the body either. So my dad literally phased out of my life and then disappeared forever. They said he was dead. I never got to verify that. We had a weird funeral, and then I went back to school and graduated, and then tried to be in the industry and turned away from that because that's evil. And and I knew that after only a year of circling the industry. I didn't even make it in. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that with the legacy conversation, to tie that back in, like, there's so much that they are responsible for as a group. In maintaining not only someone's memory, but the integrity of their origin. Like, they're a healing voice for so many people. And for them to just completely discard my father and to not acknowledge him in any real way or have any of the new members actually say anything serious or coherent about not only Emily's past or Colin's past, but also, the situation at hand. It's just very strange. And I think that we're here in a moment again where legacy becomes a very important question. It's like, do we believe what they're saying Chester wanted? Or do we believe what Chester said he wanted? And then Mike Shinoda saying, "But this is what he wanted." It's like, stop it. Stop it. What do I got? I made a joke. I was like, you know what? I think in reality what they're doing is something super meta, and that they have to do it this way. They have to kind of like burn the ship Viking style. Linkin Park is the funeral pyre, and they're over here like, "Oh, yep, it's on fire now. Let's let it burn." And they're touring that shit around the country, around the planet, and they're purposely building up this resentment for some reason, or this confusion for some reason. And it seems intentional. It seems very intentional. But I say as a joke, like, how much you want to bet we're on a 200-day timer? And it started the day that the 100-hour timer started. And that in reality, this is a 200-day cycle because the 100 hours went all the way down, gave us a date. And then it went all the way back up, and then the show happened.
Wow.
I was just
By the
thinking
way,
about that.
Shinoda said this to the crowd. It's not about erasing the past. It is about starting this new chapter into the future and coming out here for each and every one of you. Do you think he's implying that to you?
Yeah, obviously, I think he's implying that because then he literally said, all of you are Chester Bennington. But what's really interesting when you tie all those details together is you're like, wait a second. But he just said we're all Chester Bennington. So he's saying, we came out here for you, Chester. Heavy is the crown. You're getting what you asked for, motherfucker. Why did you have to go make Cross off secretly? You really put us in a pickle there. The end of the contract, and you just couldn't wait. So in my mind today, I've actually seen the line in Heavy is the Crown, or Emptiness Machine, maybe. I think it's Emptiness Machine, where she says, going around like a revolver, it's been decided how we lose. I'm like, was Chester the revolver? Oops. Oops, Chester couldn't stay quiet long enough. All he had to do was finish the fucking tour. That's all he had to do. He was done. It was like an animal in a cage going crazy. And then he's like, yeah, we're making pop songs, but I don't want to scream about my anxiety anymore because I'm like, Barty. And then like literally going to Mark Morton and screaming, heavy is the hand that points the finger. Heavy is the heart that's filled with anger. Heavy are the words that go unspoken. Have you taken account of all that you've lain to waste? It's like, have you learned to love the taste of the destruction in your wake? Chester, bro, come on, bro. You gotta chill. We gotta get through this tour cycle. He did that in April. He died in July.
Wow.
So I'm wondering if witness protection has more to do with it than anything, because it kind of sounds like every Linkin Park album is about dissing predators in the industry. And
yeah, I have Jesse from San Diego. He says, I would want to know if he knew about the conspiracy theory that Chester was talking about before he passed. And now with P. Diddy getting busted, I'm really curious what he has to say about it. Personally, I do not believe he committed suicide.
Yeah, it's a fact. They're all connected. There is no, well, is it? Mike Shinoda, and because of Mike Shinoda, Linkin Park were heavily entangled with Jay-Z and Beyonce. They were. Chester used to walk around the house and go, bro, I fucking made it. I'm going to dinner with Bey tonight. What the hell's going on? He's like, I keep hanging out with Jay-Z. He's like, Jay-Z's inviting me to these dinners. And like, I just keep hanging out with like, you know, the pinnacle of it's Jay-Z and Beyonce. Okay. And that's how he would say it. He'd be like, you know, walking around the house like, what the fuck? And then slowly he'd stop talking about it. Oh, interesting. You know, slowly it's like, hey dad, I want to meet Will Smith. That's the only one I ever want to meet. Because I was raised on Men in Black and things like that, you know. Will's energy is just unparalleled in that era. Like, he's so lighthearted and funny and welcoming as like a energy. I wouldn't say that now. I don't like Will now at all. I like his kids. I don't like him. I don't like Jada either. But, you know, I think that I can't even watch Red Table Talk. It's so fucking annoying how shallow that shit has been. And it makes me sad that the kids have to be involved or choose to be involved. And then I realized lately that they're Scientologists. They were Scientologists at some point.
Oh.
And
okay.
I didn't know that. And so not only is Scientology like deeply related to all of this, but like here you have Jay-Z, who's best friends with P. Diddy, who's Sean Combs, being, you know, caught out for doing all this shit. And then they're all like, they're saying Jay-Z's worse than Sean. They're saying Jay's worse than Sean. What's his actual name? His name isn't Jay-Z. What's his name? Sean.
Sean Carter.
They're both Sean's? Great. Sean is supposed to be as bad or worse as Sean. Okay? And I'm not calling him Jay-Z anymore. He can suck it. It's Sean. I hate that people use monikers for celebrities as if they're not real people. It's not P. Diddy. It's Sean Combs. You know what I mean? Okay.
Yeah.
So with that being said, like, yes, Mike and the group were involved with Paul McCartney and the top 1%. You know, Paul McCartney's in the higher level of things. He's the Beatles, right? Like, holy shit. And that was a big influence of Chester's. They were around. I've been showing photos of them with the Clintons as late as 2014. I've been showing photos of Mike embedded in like the 1% community. He's out there with the Burkles, who's their youngest son, a film producer who allegedly met with Diddy's adopted son, with Sean Combs' adopted son before he died in 2020. was about to make something. And, you know, there's all these like interesting ties where you're like, the deeper you dig and the more you look at who they're connected with, it's like, oh no, you guys probably know what the Diddy party was. Oh yeah, you guys did go to the after party for the Grammys and that was hosted by somebody. Oh, you know what? I remember asking as a child, I want to go. I would ask like Chester, like, can I go? Hey, you want an Oscar? Can I go? And I know I said Oscar instead of Grammy. I get it, but yeah, it's a joke. And you know, you want an Oscar, Chester? You're undercover so well. And you know, can I go? And he's like, this is a mommy daddy kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds kind of weird. And then you know, he's tweeting weird things about meeting Kevin Spacey and all this other shit. Like it's just crazy, crazy, crazy. And the more you go into it, the more you realize that what you thought was an elephant in a dark room is actually a horse. And you're like, wait a second. I'm not even looking at the thing I thought I was looking at. What is going on right now? And I think that it's interesting that there are so many people tied into this as well. It's like, again, if Mike is doing what I perceive he might be, a big middle finger to the industry finally, coming out and saying and doing exactly what Linkin Park always set out to do in their final run, then he's one hell of a prankster. Because this takes fucking, I mean, you have to go on you have to do the LPO showcase, you have to release the singles and play them, you have to play every single show on that tour that's constantly expanding, drop the album, then go continue to tour it until it's the time to do the thing you need to do. And the whole time you have to smile and act like you're having the funnest time of your life while you know that you're just destroying lives. Like for real. You're like, really, you're creating like massive tsunami waves in like many communities. And like, I always point this out too, like Emily is like almost not even trying. You guys see that on stage? She's like, and I get this, I get it, I vibe with it, I feel it. But like, when you watch Chester play, and I guess she's doing her own thing, but if you're going to go on Greatest Hits tour, you better be fucking serving. Okay. That's what I'm saying. It's like, if you're going to get all these people to pay you money to show up at your concert, and you're replacing this man, you better do it justice. If you're not going to play your own album, you better do it.
How are you feeling when she performs your father's songs?
I think that it's a nice karaoke job. I think that, you know, it sounds like someone having fun for sure. I think that she's going to hurt her voice. I think that I'm very worried that Emily in the long run has hurt her voice. I have a lot of respect for people as people. I can understand art as art and that people are people, and those are two different things. So I can enjoy Linkin Park as much as I detest some of their actions at the moment. And, you know, with Emily, I'm just kind of worried that she's pushing it a little hard. I realize that there are people saying that they're using, you know, backing tracks, but not just for backing for things that you can't simultaneously play, but they're also just replacing the vocal just in case she gets drowned out. But I also noticed that her mic at the Kia Forum show, and also it sounded like it on the LPU showcase on the 5th, so the 5th and the 11th of September, they seemed like they mixed her vocals really low. Like even in the arena, it didn't sound like she was nowhere near the amount, the level of intensity and clarity that Chester was. And it's weird. It kind of sounds, I know they changed the keys for songs, so I know that they're accounting for her vocal range, but it's very strange because even with that vocal range, she's still cracking and breaking, which I don't mean to crack a smile there at all. It's just like I can hear it hurts. I can hear that you can't do it. I can see how many shows you've had to stop in the middle of songs that are already technically challenging and just pretend that you're letting the audience sing for like more than a minute. You know what I mean? Like, it's not me hating. It's just me being like an observer. Like, I know how much effort it takes to put into a performance in the first place, and I know what shoes you're stepping into as a performer. And there are a lot of people who will buy it 100%. There are a lot of people who don't care. But the bleeding hearts out here, we do care. And we also, it makes everything a lot more difficult to stomach when you're not offering true acknowledgement about anything that you are or have been or intend to be. It's just like, man, you are, I called Mike and Emily the king and queen of shutting the fuck up. And then I was laughing because the Billboard music director, Lipschitz, he just released a book on the 1st, and I was like, it literally says Lipschitz. I don't mean to make that guy feel weird at all. I haven't read the book yet, but it's coming. want to do an analysis.
Got a question here from Ezekiel in Westmont, Illinois.
Oh, Illinois. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ezekiel Ortega, and I'm from Westmont, Illinois. What do you see yourself doing in 10 years? Do you think you'll be following along the side of your father's footsteps? Or do you think you'll be following your own footsteps?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm kind of embedded in it, huh?
Yeah.
A long time ago, I decided that I was only ever going to give solutions. I would never give a problem without a solution again. And that thought came to me as a long evolution of a couple of things. But in particular, it was finishing my short film, A Chant. That did that for me. Because I spent 3 years on that.
Chant, okay.
I wrote it, directed it, produced it, funded it. Like, I did everything. I drew out all the shots beforehand. Like, I was basically trying to create a self-reflective piece of media that could be used as a mental health resource. And then when I finished it, I was like, oh no, I literally made a movie about myself. And I had no idea that that's the way I was seeing things and feeling things. I thought that was just like, oh, I resonate with that energy because I'm creative. But like I said with my art beforehand, or like I said beforehand about my art, like in retrospect, everything's, 2020. It's like, oh yeah, wow, that's crazy. I didn't even see that for 3 years. And then I realized, I wasn't using the term suicidal when I was talking about my suicidal ideation back in 2017 to that moment in time. I was like, I couldn't even understand that I was suicidal. Like, that's wild. And so the movie is a direct reflection of all of the unspoken words, the unformed perspectives or undefined perspectives that were trapped up inside me as part of my awakening. And being able to say it at all was part of the awakening. And when I saw it, I was kind of like, wow, like, I don't even know what to say to this. This looks like borderline personality disorder, not schizophrenia. And it was very interesting to have that flip of consciousness. But that awakening kind of burned a hole in reality, for me, because I was like, this movie is all about the vibe of the moment. It's about the collective emotional interaction that I was having over time. It's basically a crystallization of my entire life up to that point. And I was like, but there's no solution. There's no creative or even intellectual resolution to this problem. What am I hiding? What do I have tabs on? What do I not remember? Why am I so uptight about this? Why am I so fearful? Who put that fear in me? Like, I had to ask myself some serious questions, and I decided that I would never do anything again until I was able to also provide an equal amount of solution or resolution to the problem that I was talking about. In other words, I needed to develop a voice and a perspective through which to voice. And I started building the Picture Pieces archive way back then. And even in the process of making my film, my adaptation of that Stephen King poem, Paranoid Chant, I was building this. I've actually been on this path right now, the one that I'm currently realizing in real time, for 16 years now. I decided to be here when I was 12. That was the other big decision. I said, you know what? There are two things I want for myself. I want to have developed the perspective and the environment or the skill set necessary to authentically self-realize, and to, through that process of self-actualization, hold space for others to do the same. I want me, and I want me to be represented in the people around me. And I wanted that as a healing mechanism. I wanted that as an expressive mechanism. And I basically decided that at that point I had to starve. I had to specialize. I was like, okay, what avenues are most open to me, whether I want them or not? Music, industry, career, scholarly pursuits. I was forced to go to college. So it was like, okay, then I'm going to use this time to build the website, build the music portfolio, develop my writing and directing and producing capacities, and stay only in that world, only focus on the art. That's it. That's why I said I would use my art as therapy. And then it was like, okay, now Chester magically disappeared from the fabric of reality, and it seems like this time-space continuum has been ripped just wide open. And now there's this portal that will go and allow me to step through it. And with the right discernment and negotiation, if I hold my integrity now, if I truly blossom the way that I wanted to, and I truly take those steps, and then hold myself through the process of all of the sadness that comes with that, because you're never going to get what you want exactly how you want it, then you can have what you want in 10 years instead of 20 or 30. And I was like, damn, all right. And then literally just like that, that door's closed, that door's closed, that door's closed. That, as I'm walking through them, just like naturally walking through them, I'm like, damn, there were like 12, 13, 14 different moments where the world literally ended and then restarted and ended and restarted. It's like timeline jumping. And I was like, in reality, I was just sitting there like, if I hadn't moved when I moved, I would have been crushed by the falling piano. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Cartoon style. But it's just something that I keep doing.
Oh, well, thanks, Jamie, for the chat. Now it's round 2. I'll leave it to my buddy here. Take it away, bro.
Thanks for checking out this episode of 2400 Block Podcast. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.